Thank you. Good morning to you all. You are all welcome to today's event. Honorable men and women gathered here, students. Today, we continue the celebration. We are still in the 175th anniversary mode. We've had some events, and today marks the second lecture in the series of lectures. We begin our program with a prayer from Reverend Jeffrey Mingo.
Shall we rise and pray? Lord, we are grateful this morning. Your word tells us in 1 Corinthians that we see our calling. Not many of us were wise when you called us. Not many were mighty. Not many were noble. But you chose the foolish things of this world to confound the wise, that no one will glory in your presence. Lord, you began this school with 5 students, and today this is how far you have brought us. 5 feeble students who were about to learn the language even of foreigners, who didn't know about the faith. But you chose these 5 weaklings, oh God, to start this institution to your glory. This morning, we are grateful once again, and we have gathered before you to celebrate how far you have brought the institution, O God, and how far you are going to take us. Precious Holy Spirit, have your way in our midst this morning. Minister unto us, Lord, and let this lecture, O God, propel PC to greater heights, to your glory, in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. We would take the college anthem. Be seated, would fall on the chief executive of the college to give us a welcome address.
The chairman of the Governing Council Governing Council members present, Akropong Presbyterian Chairperson, representative present, Ga Presbyterian Chairperson, in the person of Reverend Dr. Opare-Kwachi, Rector of ACI, Reverend Professor B.Y. Kwashi, Reverend Omenako, the clergy present, staff of PCE, staff of ACI present, invited guests, the press, ladies and gentlemen. I am humbled to be given this task of welcoming all to this special program. On behalf of the Chair of the Governing Council, Academic Board, Management, I officially welcome all of you to this second lecture intended to herald the 175th anniversary of the college. The theme for the day is about faith and education. This has been carefully crafted, and it promises to be an insightful and expository study for all, in order for us to be able to tell our story in our own way and fill the gaps. We need also to understand that education was used as a tool to achieve the mission agenda. For this reason, let's all brace ourselves and get ourselves ready for this insightful lecture. And on this note, I welcome all of you to this important gathering. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Nicholas Apreciation. At this point, we'll take a song from the college choir. Thank you, College Choir. I'll take this opportunity to introduce some of the dignitaries and visitors we have among us. We are fortunate to have in our midst this morning our own Council Chair, Mama Esther. We also have in attendance Reverend Professor B.Y. Kwashi, Director of Akrofi-Christaller, our closest neighbors. And then we have Reverend Professor Philip Lai, the Deputy Rector, also in attendance. Yes, Papa, you're welcome. We have Reverend Dr. Opari Kwachi with us this morning, Papa Akwaba. We also have Reverend Dr. Solomon Sulesa, also of Akrofi-Christaller. And then we have our own, how should I address him? Landlord, Reverend Dr. Nicholas Apresia. We also have, I can recognize Dr. Gazy. I'm not too sure, but I'll get the names as and when the program runs on. I can also see Mr. Ba, our former vice principal. And then I can see Dr. Wharton. Am I right? Did I get the name right? Sure. I'll get the names, pardon me. At this point, I'll stop here and I'll call on Madam Ifia Asantewa Osei to introduce the chairperson for the occasion.
Thank you. I'm much honored to be given the opportunity to introduce a distinguished personality present for this special occasion as the chair. This person, after his graduation, worked in 3 teacher training colleges. He worked at Agogo Presbyterian College as a teacher. He also worked at Presbyterian Training College, Akropong, as a tutor and as a senior housemaster, and also as a vice principal. After that, he worked at Kibi Presbyterian College of Education as a principal. His interest in education didn't end there. He was also a person who has a Presbyterian at heart. So his service in the ministry, he entered the ordained ministry and served as tenant minister at KB. He was then enrolled as a full-time minister after retirement from education service, active education service, where he worked at Amano as a full-time minister. He also worked at Edukrum and then Presbyterian, Akropong. He also moved to Suhun. Then this person, after working at Suhun for some time, he retired in 2022. Currently, this distinguished person resides at Leyte. With all protocols duly observed and without any further hesitation, our chair for this rememberable lecture is our own father, who has the Presbyterian College of Education at heart, not Akropong alone, but anytime he hears the word Presby, he is eager to give more. Our chair for this occasion is our own Reverend Omanaku. Thank you.
Chairperson of Council and other members of the Council, Rector, Akrofi-Christaller Institute and other faculty, Principal of the College, Representative of the Presbyterian Chairperson, members of staff and students of PCE, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to be invited to a ceremony such as this, and particularly so when it is this particular college. I cast my mind back, and I have sweet memories of the celebration of the 125th anniversary of this college 50 years ago. I thank God that I have lived on to be able to see 175 in celebration. I accept this responsibility with all pleasure and humility. May it be a successful lecture for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Papa. Yeah, so the college choir would give us one more song. Thank you, the college choir. At this point, I'll take it upon myself to introduce the speaker for the occasion. Papa Chairman, all protocol duly followed. The chairman for the event today is a calm, confident, and competent person. He is the current rector of the Akrofi-Christaller Institute of Theology, Mission and Culture, ACI for short, a postgraduate theological institution which runs MA, MPH, and PhD programs. It is an institution which in 2006 became one of the first 3 private universities in Ghana to be granted a presidential charter to award degrees. Our chairperson, our speaker for the day holds a PhD in New Testament Studies from Princeton Theological Seminary, Princeton, New Jersey, USA, and has over 20 years teaching experience from the Department for the Study of Religions of the University of Ghana. He has headed this department for twice in succession In addition, he has, to his credit, experience as part-time lecturer and examiner of several educational institutions in Ghana, South Africa, and the US of A. He has been a minister of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana since 1976 and has served and continues to serve the church in different capacities, included but not limited to several committees, councils, and boards, both local and international. Currently, he is a member of the Council of the Bible Society of Ghana, the National Accreditation Board of the Ministry of Education, and the Board of Directors of GAP Microfinance Limited. He's also the current president of the Ghana Association of Private Tertiary Institutions, chairman, Board of Governors, Ghana Presbyterian School of Ministry, and chairman, Board of Governors, La Community Bank, La Mansamo Bay, La Town Development Association Education Scholarship Scheme. He is a retired human resource practitioner with several publications to his credit, and is married to Madame Adina, and they have 2 grown-up children and 4 grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Reverend Professor Bernard Y. Kwashi, our speaker for the occasion.
Thank you very much. Don't believe everything you see on the net. There are a few outmoded things you said. I thank God for this opportunity. Chairman for the occasion, chairperson of council and council members of the college. My colleagues from ACI, staff and students of PCE. I'm most grateful to God for the opportunity to share with you a few thoughts on the theme for today's lecture. Faith and education, the church's enduring influence in training teachers for the pre-tertiary level in Ghana. 175 years in the life of an institution like PCE is definitely worth celebrating. The theme for the celebration, 175 years of holistic training, meeting the demands of modern education, underscores the institution's desire not to live in the past, but rather recall it, learn from it to review the present, and plan for and shape the future. I count it a privilege to be part of this 175th anniversary celebration and to have the honor to give this lecture on faith and education, the church's enduring influence in training teachers for the pre-tertiary level in Ghana. Chairman, the marriage between religion and education is a long-standing one. We are aware of famous educational institutions all over the world, founded by religious groups, not least by churches. In our own setting, that linkage between religion and education has been a long-established one. Before the dawn of formal education, especially in the setup of the Basel Mission, which defined formal education in Gold Coast, Ghana for well over a century, religion was very much a part of formal education among our people. The rituals that accompanied the various rites of passage, pregnancy, child, puberty rites, marriage, and funeral rites, all entailed informal education that had far-reaching consequences. And of course, you can also mention the annual festivals we celebrate and the exercises we go through to install chiefs. They all entail a combination between religion and education. All of these constituted part of the socialization process that impacted the lives of individuals as well as the community at large. When Christianity arrived in the Gold Coast, therefore, it encountered a notoriously religious people who easily recognized and appreciated the linkage between religion, in this case Christianity, and education. In this presentation, however, I do not intend to deal with Christianity in Ghana as a whole. I'll rather focus on the Basel Mission Church, later, of course, the Presbyterian Church of the Gold Coast, and currently the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. It is in that context of the PCG, therefore, that I will deal with the training of teachers for pre-tertiary education in Ghana. We must then first look at pre-tertiary level of education in Ghana, where, of course, the trained teachers would have to go and serve. Chairman, pre-tertiary education in Ghana, the key to national development. First of all, what is it? Pre-tertiary education in Ghana, according to the Ghana Pre-Tertiary Education Act of 2020, Act 1049, embraces basic and secondary education. Basic education is made up of 2 years of kindergarten, 6 years of primary school, and 3 years of junior high school. Secondary education, on the other hand, entails 3 years of senior high school or 3 years of technical and vocational education and training. In effect, pre-tertiary education in Ghana is supposed to be over a period of 14 years. The period involved here in the life of the individual makes pre-tertiary education foundational to the rest of formal education. So, Chair, the foundational nature of pre-tertiary education. The foundational nature of pre-tertiary education cannot be disputed. Every knowledgeable person will acknowledge that a solid foundation in any enterprise is a prerequisite to long-lasting success. Indeed, a prerequisite to the erection of an equally solid and sustainable superstructure. We readily recall the two builders captured in his sermon, Matthew 7:24-27, and the Sermon on the Plain, Luke 6:46-49, and how he highlights a good foundation as a necessity to not just success, but sustainability. In effect, he reduces the choice between building on a solid or weak foundation to a choice between wisdom and foolishness. It is this foundational nature of pre-tertiary education that informs my submission that it holds the key to our national development. What then are the realities on the ground with regard to pre-tertiary education, if it truly holds the key to national development. The realities. Beyond any shadow of a doubt, the most significant development on the pre-tertiary education front in Ghana has been the introduction of the free senior high school education in September 2017. This has not come with challenges. This has not come without challenges. These challenges are well known, and I have no intention of rehashing them here, except to indicate that there have been several calls for a review of the policy, but these calls have so far all fallen on deaf ears. What I would want to comment a bit more on, though, has to do with a more basic level of education in terms of kindergarten, primary, and junior high school education. We are closing into maybe some 200 years or so of consistent basic education in our country as far as the Basel mission is concerned. We have been independent as a nation for 66 years, and sadly, we hear day in and day out that there are children who do not have access to basic education, that educational foundation on which everything else rests. For those who can access basic education, some still study under trees. Others have to go long distances to attend school. Some of them face risks every day. And we have heard in the news every now and then of accounts of children who have drowned because they have to cross rivers to and from school. More often than not, learning resources are not available, not to speak of school furniture. We see the images of children sitting on the floor with their limited books, seeking to write and study. Apart from these challenges, there is the issue of human resource. There are many so-called teachers who are in fact not interested in teaching at all. They have simply ended up in the teaching field, but are always on the lookout for opportunities to get out of the teaching field. They went into teaching simply because they did not have anything else to do, and now that they are in it, they seek to use it as a stepping stone into other professions. Some of those who have decided to remain in the teaching field have set their eyes on exploiting their pupils, students, and their parents by running their own special classes while failing to offer their best to their students in the regular school setup. Sometimes one is left with a distinct impression that no one supervises the work of teachers. Some of these challenges facing pre-tertiary education in Ghana that we hear about every now and then have actually been documented. A report on the first term of the 2019-2020 academic year, produced by the National Inspectorate Board at the time, focuses on the Greater Accra and Eastern regions. In its preliminary results, though some positives were noted, such as manageable class sizes and cooperation between stakeholders, some of the key findings pointed to the lack of quality in teaching, the lack of prepared teaching plans, the use of unapproved textbooks, and both student, pupil, and teacher absenteeism. Significantly, too, English was noted as the main language of instruction for both public and private schools. And it is striking that the report, when it came to recommendations, chose to be silent on this matter of the language of instruction. Report from 2019-2020. A more recent report is even more telling. In September 2021, the National Schools Inspectorate Authority came out with a report, the 2021 School Performance Plus Inspectorate Aggregate Report on 1,000 inspected Gallup schools. Gallup means Ghana Accountability for Learning Outcomes Project. This project, a collaboration between the World Bank and the government of Ghana, targeted 10,000 low and least performing public basic schools, kindergarten, primary, and high schools, to help improve the quality of education in these schools and to, quote, strengthen education sector equity and accountability in Ghana, end of quote. After sampling and inspecting 1,000 out of the 10,000 selected schools in all 16 regions of Ghana, the report came out with a summary of 15 key findings that underscored the overall unsatisfactory state of these public basic schools. The schools lack infrastructure and food safety. Some of them operate in mud buildings, wooden structures under trees, in a tent, in thatched shed or open pavilion, cement block buildings, and a mixture of all these. On the buildings, the report concludes that, and I quote, most of the structures were found to be in various deterioration and were not conducive for effective teaching and learning, end of quote. Besides, there were not enough classrooms, while there was low enrollment of teachers of pupils in some cases, both contributing to multi-grade teaching. There was also not enough desks, no libraries or ICT laboratories, and no potable water for many, with some relying on rivers, streams, and even rainwater. Over 95% of the schools had no canteens, and over a third of the schools were not enrolled in the National School Feeding Program, while most had self-arranged school feeding programs. Moreover, many of the schools lacked toilet facilities, and the 72% who had them did not have enough. Since our interest in this lecture is in the training of teachers, let us see what the report has to say about teachers and teaching. The report mentions a deficit in teachers that contributed to multi-grade teaching. 74.1% of the schools did not have teachers' accommodation. The remaining 25.9% who had did not have enough for all their teachers. 23% of the teachers were absent at the time of the inspection. With regard to teaching, the assessment of the teaching and learning of English, maths, and science was, quote, rated unsatisfactory for the overall quality of teaching and learning, end of quote. The unsatisfactory rating was also given to the quality of teaching and learning at the kindergarten level. Finally, with regard to the schools that had external assessment results, 92.8% of the schools were rated unsatisfactory. The recommendations of the report place responsibilities mostly on the shoulders of the Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service, and the National Teaching Council. With specific reference to teachers, the recommendations indicate, for instance, that there is a no teacher absenteeism policy that somehow is not being properly implemented. Moreover, teachers need to be appointed, and the quote, continuous professional development, CPD, strategies for effective teaching of science and English at the basic level, unquote, must be implemented. And so must also be implemented the CPDs targeted at kindergarten teachers to equip them with the necessary knowledge and skills to teach at that level. Obviously, many teachers at the pre-tertiary level have not been well equipped for what they are supposed to do. Given the realities on the ground, as far as pre-tertiary education is concerned, it is fair to conclude that the foundation of education in Ghana is weak, and we cannot sustain any superstructure on it and thereby ensure national development. What is happening is that in spite of all these challenges, pupils and students are somehow passing examinations in their numbers. I don't know whether cheating is a factor, but they are passing and making quote-unquote progress in their education. They continue to end up in tertiary level education, but at that level, the results of the weak foundation easily come to the fore. Today, some graduates with even second degrees cannot fulfill responsibilities that Standard 7 products of yesteryears fulfilled with distinction. Those of us who have been involved in tertiary education for a generation or so can testify to the falling standards in education in our country. Apart from a few exceptional students who offer a breath of fresh air, many, if not most, of the products of tertiary education today do not have much to offer in the development of our nation. No wonder that many of them are unemployed. Those of us involved in graduate or postgraduate education appreciate even more the challenges that I'm referring to here in terms of the quality of graduates. Little wonder that plagiarism and ghostwriting have become such a huge business. Things are bound to get even worse with the way things are going with artificial intelligence, AI. What we have is a vicious cycle, a weak foundation whose products end up in tertiary level education. For the purposes of this lecture, for them to be trained as teachers, only to return often ill-equipped to the foundational level to further weaken the foundation. The latest telling commentary on the dire state of education at the pre-tertiary level is the news a few days ago about the mass failure in the teacher licential examinations. The public relations officer of the National Teaching Council, one Dennis Osei-Osu, is reported to have said that the high rate in the 2023 teacher licential examination is, quote, a national security threat. He is said to have declared, and I'm quoting him extensively at this point, this is a national security threat that that we need to pay attention to as a country. Some of these teachers have written for the 9th time, and others for the 2nd. We really need to pay attention to this because we are talking about teachers coming to train our future generation. So if a teacher cannot even spell his or her own name, then we have something at hand. End of quote. 83.5% of the teachers failed the 2023 exams, just this last May. Only 1,277 passed the exams. That involved numeracy, literacy, and essential skills. The candidates came from colleges of education as well as universities. The PRO is reported to have concluded that, and I'm quoting him here again, I can emphatically say some of them are not fit to be called teachers. End of quote. The question we are left with is whether the church is part of the current challenges of the weak foundation of our pre-tertiary level of education, given the church's long history of involvement in education, and specifically in the training of teachers. How did the church operate in this space of teacher training in the past? The church's enduring influence. Chairman, to talk about the church's influence in training teachers for the pre-tertiary level in Ghana as enduring suggests that that influence has been in place and is continuing. It is ongoing. How did that influence of the church in the training of teachers for the pre-tertiary level exist in the past? And to what degree? How was that influence maintained? Is that influence really enduring today? If not, how can it be rekindled and sustained? So we turn, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, to a brief look at the past. The fundamental element that characterized the church's influence in the training of teachers in the past was its maintenance of a marriage between the Christian faith and formal education. The Basel mission arrived on the shores of the Gold Coast to primarily preach the gospel and thereby fulfill the Great Commission. They, however, never saw their mission in isolation. They always understood the preaching of the gospel as entailing the total development and salvation of the total person. It was not just a spiritual matter for them in terms of the salvation of the soul, but also a physical matter in terms of the salvation and well-being of the physical body. This is why the Basel Mission built schools and got involved in agricultural activities, environmental care, economic activities, and the provision of health services. The provision of education and schools was meant to develop human resources for the church and the society and nation at large. The building of chapels went hand in hand with the building of schools. A word that I believe aptly describes the Basel mission approach is the word integration. They adopted an integrated approach to mission work that embraced the promotion of the total well-being of the individual. It was a holistic approach, and the integration encompassed the whole of the individual. Moreover, this approach was consistent with their understanding of the human being as one made up of both the physical and the spiritual. And just as the spiritual and the physical in the individual cannot be separated and be able to preserve wholeness, so for the church, faith and education could not be separated. Faith can be used in various ways. For instance, a person can claim to have faith in another person in the sense of having belief in that person and trusting in the person's abilities to accomplish one thing or another. In the context of our topic, however, faith has a much more theological meaning. It refers to the church's belief in Jesus Christ as the source of salvation to all who come to him in faith. Those who believe in him acknowledge him as Savior and all the implications that amounts to. In effect, it is the church's message that faith in Jesus Christ is the source of salvation for humankind. It is this belief and the belief system that it emanates from it that went hand in hand with the educational system birthed by the Basel mission. Education, on the other hand, can be formal or informal. We have already acknowledged that informal education existed in the Gold Coast before the birth of formal education. The Basel mission, in introducing formal education, did not abandon informal education. Our primary interest here is, however, in formal education, and more specifically in the training of teachers for the pre-tertiary level in our country. In its training of teachers, as throughout its educational system, the Basel mission was driven by a philosophy that informed its curricula and the running of its schools. Again, this was an integrated approach that reflected the marriage between faith and education. And for teacher training, it was reflected in the pre-training, training, and post-training of teachers. Chairman, first, a look at the pre-training stage. When we refer to this pre-training stage, we are talking about the recruitment of candidates for training to become teachers. The church created a solid base for the recruitment of teacher trainees. The feeding of the training colleges with candidates came mainly from the middle schools, Standard 7. And this happened especially through the middle boarding schools, the Salems. It is noteworthy that for 110 years after the arrival of the Basel mission, the Basel Mission Church, the Presbyterian Church of the Gold Coast, did not see it fit to establish a secondary school. it was only 90 years after the establishment of this institution, then, of course, Presbyterian Training College, that through local agitation, the first secondary school of the church, the Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, Presec, was established at Akropong-Akuapem. 90 years, no secondary school institution for the Basel Mission. So they were feeding PTC with people who moved from the pre-tertiary level straight into the college. And that tells you the solidity of that foundation at the time. The Basel Mission was content to be feeding its training colleges with graduates from its middle schools. Teacher training, therefore, was built on the solid foundation laid by the pre-tertiary level that was up to only middle school. This system went on not only to produce the best teachers, but also the best professionals in other fields of human endeavor. I'm sure we all know about the reputation, years of Basel Mission-trained graduates. But this was the pre-training stage, the recruitment stage, and how a solid foundation facilitated the admission of the right people for training to become teachers. Now, briefly, the training itself. The training of potential teachers again reflected the marriage between faith and education. The church's integrated approach or philosophy meant the training of the head, the heart, and the hands. In other words, the trainees were formed into Christians who came out as teachers. This means that the faith dimension was primary, and that informed the thinking, the feeling, and the doing of trainees. The inculcation of values, Christian values, was paramount. Train up a child the way he should go, and when he grows up, he will not depart from it. The Proverbs 22:6 passage clearly underscored what the Basel Mission was about. It informed the training of those who were recruited to be trained as teachers, and continued to inform the training of potential teachers. The values were values of hard work, discipline, honesty, integrity, dignity of labor, diligence, good time management, deep sense of curiosity, appreciation and value of nature, and on and on. All the things that we know proverbially as Basel Mission training or Presbyterian discipline. Developing the mind, acquiring knowledge, being a morally good person with good moral values, and developing skills. All of these went hand in hand with keeping fit, being health conscious, maintaining good hygiene habits, and being interested in such things as music and singing and drumming and dancing and so on. All of these were regarded as important for the formation of a person, the total development of the total person. The products of the Basel Mission training colleges were equipped to play helpful and even leading roles in the church, in the congregations in which they found themselves. Of course, key to that was what was known as the fifth year, when teachers were trained to become teacher catechists. But even in the four-year training, there was enough to prepare the teacher to be of good help in his congregation. The church's interest in trainees did not, however, end with their graduation. So I move on, Chairman, to the post-training stage. The church recruited the teachers that it trained. Here we encounter the governance structures at work at the time. The church employed them to teach in its institutions. The church had full control, and later relatively full control, of its educational system. This enabled the church to influence the inculcation of its Christian values in the ways that it saw fit. Again, integration was at work, in that the church, the school, the home, the community, and later, to some extent, the state, worked hand in hand and were on the same page when it came to moral formation in the educational system. The pre-tertiary pupil or student was often a member of the church. Indeed, more often than not, a member of the church. A person of Christian parentage. Someone who lived in a Christian community, Salem. In essence, the student got the same message, the same values, wherever he or she found himself or herself. One of the reasons why the pre-tertiary level remained such a solid foundation for a long time was the fact that trainee teachers were recruited from the church system, trained in the church system, and returned to the church system to work. One critical aspect of working in the church system as teachers that ensured effective teaching and training and successful products from the church school system was the supervision by the church system of teachers in church schools. Year after year, from the synod records, teachers were terminated for a variety of reasons. The message was clear that the teacher was an exemplar, a role model, a mentor, who had to be a paragon of virtue and good morals, and indeed of every value that the church believed in. These were the same values that the teacher was expected to inculcate in their students. In effect, the teacher had to model those values in order to have the moral right to inculcate same in his or her students. The strong supervision of teachers in the Basel Mission educational setup that involved periodic visits by the education officials of the church also involved a role for the minister of the local congregation. The minister was the local manager of the church's school, and the school was as much the minister's responsibility as the congregation. The minister therefore assisted in the supervision efforts of the church and not contributed to the expected output of the educational system. Chairman, this brief overview of the Basel Mission Days in terms of the recruitment, training, and employment and supervision of teachers for the pre-tertiary level, considered against the backdrop of the realities of our day, leaves us with a sense of nostalgia as far as the church's influence in teacher training is concerned. The church's influence has not endured to the same degree that it used to be. Truly today, it is extremely weak to the detriment of our nation and its development. It is, however, not too late. We can act now to generate a greater influence for the church in the training of teachers for the pre-tertiary level in Ghana. So, Mr. Chairman, I would want to look at the church's enduring influence now in terms of the future, the way forward. In thinking about the way forward, I would want to make my submissions in terms of the three areas I have mentioned earlier when dealing with teacher training, namely recruitment of candidates for training, the training proper, and the post-training aspect of employment and supervision. Before taking these up, however, permit me to deal with what I regard as the current broken system. The fact that the foundation of pre-tertiary level education is weak, and we are currently involved in a vicious cycle we must break. The way out, I believe, is the retraining of teachers. Some may call it in-service training. There may be efforts ongoing in this direction. But I believe that the church must be interested in offering such training to those who teach in our schools. It may not be easy, as it were, to teach an old dog new tricks, but we must at least make the effort. Now, Chairman, on to recruitment of teacher trainees in terms of what we do beyond this stage. As earlier suggested, the integrated approach of the Basel Mission afforded the church the opportunity to be more involved in who went into training to become a teacher. The role of the church and its structures, no doubt, has receded. Nevertheless, the church can do better than it is doing now. I believe that the church must help its members, especially the younger ones, to discover their gifts and their calling. The church should assist those who wish to become teachers to have a clear sense of calling and recognize teaching as a calling, a vocation, one that they must enjoy doing, one that they must find fulfillment in doing. The church and the nation cannot afford teachers who have no commitment and dedication to teaching because they do not see it as God's call upon their lives. And here, Chairman, it may be worth exploring if the admission of students could require maybe endorsement from church structures and so on. I appreciate the context I'm talking about now, but I'll return shortly to the issue of governance and how, when you are talking about public institutions, some of these matters may become difficult to handle. But I'll come to that. But there are options that I believe could be explored. Now, with regard to the training itself, so far, I have not said anything about those who are directly involved in the training of teachers. For example, this college and its staff. I haven't done so because I count this institution and its staff as part of the church. It is not for nothing that this institution has been headed by ministers, and the current one is also a minister. And those who have not been ministers have been staunch members of the church. And those who serve here, who teach here, normally are committed Christians, strong members of the church. So when we talk about this institution training teachers, we are talking about it in the context of the church. The values that the values that this institution, therefore, as a church institution, must inculcate in its students. The training in the past equipped teachers not only to teach, but also serve the church, the congregation, in other capacities. And I've hinted at this. Of course, the 5th year prepared teachers to become catechists as well. Whatever the case may be, those who were trained as teachers were themselves active church members. Today, the training does not necessarily equip the teacher to be able to actively participate in the life and ministry of the church beyond the school system. This, I believe, can be remedied, as some courses or a program could be designed to help teachers to become equipped and better placed to serve not only the school, but also the church. In the area of employment and supervision, once a trainee becomes a teacher and is employed, the expectations are high. The church, and of course, the institution that trained him or her, used to have, no, I should say, the church used to have a firm control over teachers. Something that ensured that they lived up to their responsibilities and were terminated when they fell short. The situation, of course, is now different. The church has no such control, and circumstances are such that the stakeholders, the church, the school, the home, the community, and even the state, are not always on the same page. As has been suggested, today, what used to be homes, have become houses, in the sense that